All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Elijah Talks Ball. Monday Night Football, Week 16, time is flying, has just concluded. The Packers pitched the first shutout of the season against the New Orleans Saints. 34-0 is the final. And something that's really just been developing over the past couple weeks. Are the Packers the best team in football? You know, we talked about the Lions for a little bit. Obviously, they're definitely one of the best teams. Then we started talking about the Eagles. The Chiefs have been there. The Bills had their little stretch of kind of the bandwagon talking heads saying, oh yeah, the Bills, they're Super Bowl favorites. But we haven't talked about the Packers a ton because guess what? They're going to be 11-4 after this victory. But they're in third place in the NFC North behind the 13-2 Lions and the 13-2 Vikings. So this team could potentially finish 13-4 and still finish in third place in their own division. I don't think that's ever happened in NFL history. Definitely not since the expanded season. Just an incredible testament to Matt LaFleur as they did some of those games with Malik Willis as their starting quarterback, somebody they picked up off of waivers at the end of preseason. Jordan Love has been banged up for a majority of the season. They've been without Jair Alexander for 5 straight weeks. So, going to kind of jump into that, give my thoughts on, who the teams are to beat and just kind of the playoff landscape after this game. We're already, going into the final 2 weeks of the season. So, we've got a good idea of these teams. So, we're going to dive into it. Before we start, like and subscribe, comment down below. I hope you watched my predictions for the college football playoff. I went 2 for 2. I did not see Tennessee getting blown out by Ohio State. That was an impressive victory. And if Ohio State plays like they did on Saturday night, look out. Because Will Howard was feeling it. Jeremiah Smith was all over the field. And that defense was flying around. They could give anybody troubles. And this is what a lot of people said at the beginning of the season and throughout the season. That if the Ohio State Buckeyes play to their potential and stay out of their own way, they will win the national championship. And it's certainly looking like that right now. Dominant performance. Now they got to go take on Oregon. A rematch. Now they'll be in the Rose Bowl. So awesome atmosphere, one of the best pro sports events. I guess it's not technically pro, but one of the best sports events in all of the world. Can't wait for the festivities and to see that game take place. Should be incredibly exciting. Outside of that, Indiana, they kind of got shut down. And then the 2 other games were clunkers as well. Clemson put up a good fight against Texas. I got to say, they probably were the most impressive loser. But really, something that just became evident. It's tough to win on the road, and especially in playoff games and all those home teams they dominated. They were all the higher seed, obviously, since they were home, and they look like it. So, do all that stuff. Comment down below what you think of the playoffs moving forward, both college and the NFL. And, let's jump on into it. So, like I was saying, Packers beat the Saints 34-0. They do it with the majority of the game resting Josh Jacobs, their star running back, which kudos to the Packers front office. After the Cowboys playoff game and when they came up just short against the Niners, we watched Aaron Jones, their former running back, who's now, ironically, on the Vikings. We watched him go off. I mean, he diced up the Dallas Cowboys on the ground. 130 yards, couple touchdowns, looked very good against the San Francisco 49ers. And over the past 6 years, he's not, I wouldn't say heart and soul of the team, but he's been a pivotal identity of the squad. Multiple 1,000-yard seasons, can count on them for 10 to 12 touchdowns a year. Pretty good receiving threat as well. He's been a staple in their offense over the past half decade. And he still had a little bit left in the tank. They ended up cutting him, which was shocking to me. I could not believe that because we just watched him play really good for them in the playoffs, and it felt like the offense was running through him. But this is what Bill Belichick was so good at, and it kind of gets tainted because of the later part of his career with the Pats. but he was so good at getting rid of players a year early instead of a year late. We watched it with Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy, Willie McGinnis, Randy Moss. I mean, he was so good at moving on from guys. Ironically, the one that bit him in the ass was Tom Brady, but that's just something you have to do in the NFL. It's better a year early than a year late. And the Packers saw that with Aaron Jones. They saw the writing on the wall. They knew that he was injury prone, even though he was a good character guy, a good teammate, and would put up numbers. They said, we have a chance to go get Josh Jacobs, who's only 25 years old. He's shown that he can lead the league in rushing. He can carry an offense, which he did pretty much his entire career with the Raiders. He had a down year last year, so the market maybe was not as exciting for him. But he was banged up on a terrible Raiders offense. And he has come into this season, and he's given the Packers an identity that they haven't had probably since Amon Green. And that's a throwback to, the early Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre days. I mean, Amon Green, I don't even think he played with Aaron Rodgers. That was strictly Brett Favre. But they have this physical dimension, because something that seems to bite the Packers in the ass is that they've had these prolific throwing offenses my entire life with Favre and Rodgers. I mean, 7 MVPs between the two of them since 1993. But they play in Green Bay. So when they have these 14-2, 13-3 seasons, they're accustomed to the cold. They're not worried about playing it in it. It's not like the Miami Dolphins or the Dallas Cowboys, these warm teams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going up to play in the frigid cold, and you're worried about, are they going to acclimate to it well? Are they going to play cold? Are they going to look cold? Can they throw the ball? Are they fumbling it? That's not a worry with the Packers. They live there. They play in it. Multiple games in the winter up in Green Bay every year. The thing that has bit them in the ass is that while they're accustomed to the cold, their whole offense is basically, we're going to throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. So while they still find success through the air, that cold weather is not the most suitable weather for playing, for playing up in the, the cold atmosphere. You want to run the ball and play good defense. You want to win at the line of scrimmage. And that's not something that I wouldn't say they've been bad at. That just hasn't been their focal point. But this year, bringing in Josh Jacobs, they've got a physicality to them. And it's kind of funny, because the one year that they would be home seats and have the best team for that is probably the year that they're going to go on the road. But you're telling me that if this Green Bay Packer team has to face the Atlanta Falcons in the first round, they're going to that dome in Atlanta. They have so much speed. They can play anywhere. They can play up in the tundra of Green Bay. And they could also go down to Atlanta in a dome and carve you up with Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, who is a stud. I mean, Romeo Dobbs, we don't talk about, but he's an incredible route runner. Dontavian Wicks, he's the wide receiver for him. Bo Melton, we saw him have a couple games last year. We're like, damn, could this guy be a number 2? That's their 5th receiver. And then they got 2 solid tight end options with Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Something that the Packers always do, and it's kind of like the Steelers. They never draft receivers in the first round, but they develop them incredibly. But they spend their picks on either the offensive line or blue chip defensive players. And they've been doing this right now without Jair Alexander, who's one of the best corners in the league when healthy. He's been out 5 straight games. Javon Bullard and Evan Williams, their 2 rookie safeties, have had great years. They were out tonight. But Xavier McKinney, they signed him, one of the probably the most underrated free agent acquisition of this offseason. Ties the league lead with interceptions. He has 7. Kind of back-to-back years with safeties being the best free agent acquisition with Jesse Bates and Atlanta. But like I was just saying, Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, Jair Alexander, who I mentioned, Eric Stokes, who's not having a great year, but my point is they spend their draft capital at the top of the draft on defensive guys because Matt LaFleur, Mike McCarthy, they knew that they could coach up the offense because the offense is their baby, so they didn't have to get these offensive weapons and this top-end talent because they could coach up the later round guys. So now you get a guy like Jeff Hafley, the new defensive coordinator, came from Boston College. A little bit rocky in the beginning of the season, but they've really found their stride, and they're doing it now, doing it without some of their best defensive players, and they're catching fire right now, and they've got all that talent. It's not like these are fourth round guys that have developed. Like, no, these guys, they are first round picks, some high end picks, and I'm telling you, look out. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs at the beginning of the season, and I had this theory. We saw Jordan Love catch fire in the second half of last year, and we seen him in the beginning of the year catch fire in the second half of games. And so it started to dawn on me, is Jordan Love a second half player? To where it takes him a little bit to get into the groove of the game or into the groove of the season, but then once he does, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and that's what we've been seeing. His second half of last year, he was a top 3 quarterback easily. He's been playing incredibly efficiently over the past 4 weeks. He's barely been turning the ball over, which is, his one thing that if you wanted to pick apart him for something, it would be that he turns it over a little bit, but he's high risk, high reward. He'll make some throws that you're like, well, that's a future Hall of Famer. And then he'll make some throws that say he should ride the bench. And he's limited those ride the bench plays, and he's been throwing beautiful pass over the middle. That groin has healed up, that knee has healed up, and he's just dropping dimes to Jaden Reed, dropping dimes to Christian Watson, firing it over the middle to Tucker Kraft. He looks incredible. They have this nice 1-2 punch in the backfield with Josh Jacobs, and I think it's Emmanuel Wilson, who runs hard. I really believe that the sky is the limit for this Packers team, and they're just not getting any love because you've got the Lions and the Vikings right ahead of them. And there are only 4 losses this year, and they've beat some good teams along the way. I mean, they just dominated Seattle, which, they're in the playoff hunt, but let's not act like Seattle's some scrub. They're a pretty good team. They dominated last week against them on Sunday night in Seattle, where it felt like it was almost a home game for them because of how well their fans traveled. They shut out the Saints tonight, which, yes, rookie quarterback. They're without Alvin Kamara. They're without Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. So they're down some weapons. But this team has been feisty over the past 6 or 5 weeks since they fired Dennis Allen. They've had a couple upsets. I think they're 3-2 since he took over. And it's still a bunch of guys that are highly compensated for playing the sport of football. They're the best of the best. And to come out and shut them out 34-0 without some of your best defensive players and resting your star running back for most of the game, I like it. I like this team. I feel good about this team. They can play in the cold. They can play in the heat. They can play, a 30 to 40, a 45 to 35 game. But they could also play a 20 to 17 game. Matt LaFleur is in his bag. Jordan Love is catching heat. The sky's the limit. And I think that pick for them being in the Super Bowl is looking as good as ever right now. And I don't think they're getting enough credit. Matt LaFleur, I don't think he'll win Coach of the Year, but we've got to acknowledge that he is easily a top 5 coach. And a huge testament to that is when Jordan Love went down, Malik Willis comes in, goes 3-1, and that was a cast-off from Tennessee. Matt LaFleur is just doing a great job, and they make the tough decisions. He had to fire his buddy last year, the defensive coordinator. He had to make that tough decision. They had to make the tough decision of moving on from Aaron Jones. They had to make the tough decision of trading Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, 2 future Hall of Famers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and one of the greatest receivers of our generation. They traded them in the span of one offseason, basically one full calendar year. They traded Adams and they traded Rodgers the next year, but they move on. They make this controversial pick of Jordan Love. They sit him behind Rodgers, and now it looks like Rodgers 2.0. We talk about the Steelers. We talk about the Ravens as being some of the most well-run organizations. I think sometimes since the Packers, Green Bay, kind of a small city, they don't get a ton of buzz. They don't have the radio stations like Philly, like New York, like Boston have for these sports. They're not under a microscope, but they're just quietly every year one of the best run organizations, and they have an incredible ability to just draft talent in every round. And that's how you build a team. You only have one first round pick every year. So even after the course of 4 years, you got 22 starters, 53 guys on the roster. That's only 4 players. Most of your team is made up of guys, not even in the second and third round, but from round 4 through 7, where you're probably having 2 6-round picks and 2 7s. So that's the bulk of your team. And they do a great job of filling it out. And I mean, what a cool city as well. I'm so glad the draft is there. Got to find a way to make it out to that. I like the Packers, man. I love the Packers right now. They're freaking so fun to watch, and they can just beat you in a multitude of ways. And they're flying under the radar. And I think they're going to do some damage. Because do we think that the Lions will beat them again? They were, they got whooped by them when Jordan Love was coming off that groin injury. And then they barely lose to them on game-winning field goals in Detroit on a Thursday night game a couple weeks back. So they've made this improvement. Who's to say that they wouldn't get them this time? They're getting healthy at the right time. They're catching their stride at the right time. The Vikings, I feel like that's a pretty even matchup. I would lean Packers just due to the talent. I think and especially if you get Jair Alexander back, which historically, Justin Jefferson has cooked everybody except for Jair Alexander. So if you can get him back and shut down him, I might go put some money on the Packers to win the Super Bowl. I like what I'm seeing out of them. Saints, just tough. I think Darren Rizzi has done a really good job being an interim head coach. Obviously, it's the short end of the stick when you're in that situation, but he's handled it as well as you can. He's definitely a hothead. I like it, though. I like to see a passionate guy on the sidelines. I think we lose that a little bit with all the talk of these player coaches and, not wanting to step on anybody's toes and you're walking on eggshells. Like, sometimes you got to get yelled at. All right, that's how you get in line. And I like seeing it, but just a stinker tonight. And, really they just got a lot of question marks moving forward. A lot of that cap is ate up right now. I'm surprised they didn't move on for more players at the trade deadline. They did with Lattimore. Surprised they didn't try to move, DeMario Davis or Cameron Jordan, even a Tyrann Mathieu. Felt like, the Bills probably could have gotten a 4th rounder or even maybe a 3rd rounder, but probably a 4th rounder for a guy like Tyrann Mathieu, which, is he in your long-term plans? Probably not, because you're tied to Derek Carr for at least another year. Tyrann Mathieu is getting up there in age, so felt like you could have been a little bit more aggressive at the trade deadline to just help rebuild for your future. You got a lot of aging vets on that team, but you dealt with a lot of injuries, and you just got a lot of questions. You're just gonna have to hit on a couple drafts. You're still living off of that draft where you Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, they had like 2 drafts in a row where they drafted like 6 or 7 Pro Bowlers. It was one of them, especially the one with Lattimore and Kamara. Like, that was one of the most incredible draft classes that anybody has ever had. And they're still kind of living off that. So they got to hit the reset button. I would say hard-fought battle, which I'm sure it was, but it's hard to really mean that when you lost 34-0. Either way, doesn't change the fact, even if you didn't get shut out, ton of questions that are unanswered. Moving on, as we talked about the Packers and the playoff chances that they have, which they'll probably be a wild card, but I think that actually suits them better. The rest of the NFC, you got the Lions, which, to me, Lions are still the best team in the NFL. I know they're dealing with a ton of injuries, but they have shown every week that they are going to show up and they're going to kick ass. Whether or not you keep them down, they're not going down without biting off a kneecap, as Dan Campbell would say. That offense has really embodied the fact that they know that they're going to have to go out and win games. because I've never seen a team as good as them to lose such key players on defense. Alex Anzalone, Alan McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson. And they're losing guys left and right. It's incredible that they're still 13-2. You know, we're not talking about that as much. The fact that, yeah, they're just rattling off wins. 45-32. You know, 38-31. That offense is humming. Jared Goff is having easily his best year of his career, and he's had some good years. David Montgomery goes down for a little bit. Hopefully, he can get him back. Until they show me that they can't keep up, I'm going to have the Lions at number 1. They're the most well-coached team in the league, and they're getting the most out of their guys. Jamison Williams had an incredible game. He's really breaking out this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, what more is there to say? We talk about all these offensive weapons, and then there's just Sam Laporta at tight end, one of the best rookies in the league last year, one of the best tight ends in the league. He's just, yeah, he's almost an afterthought with how many weapons they have on offense, but he can hurt you easily. And that offensive line, you could put that offensive line back in the 90s, and they will still road grade people. It's pretty sweet. So until they show me they can't do it, I'm going to stick with them. I think the Lions probably give them the best run for the money. Then the Vikings are there. And the Vikings, you know, they were 4-0, and we're saying, you know, like, is this for real? Is this just a nice little flash in the pan to begin the season? And then once teams get tape on Sam Darnold, they're going to kind of fall off. And once they figure out how to attack that Brian Flores blitz-heavy defense, like, are they going to get carved up? Like, no, they're just 13-2. Kind of another quiet, incredible season. This NFC North is built different. Those 3 teams, the Packers, Vikings, and Lions, are combined 30-4 against the rest of the NFL. I mean, what screams this Super Bowl champion is coming out of that division more than that stat? And the Vikings are, I mean, they're kind of hitting their stride. They started off really hot, and then they kind of slowed down, but they're still winning games, and now they're picking it back up. Sam Darnold has just, I mean, he's going to throw 35-40 touchdowns this year. And they have a great problem right now with, you know, what are they going to do in the future with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy? The nice part that they didn't do, like what the Falcons did, is they didn't draft a pro-ready quarterback, and they didn't hand $100 million guaranteed to Sam Darnold. So they're playing with house money. You got a guy that could probably use to sit for another 2 years, especially coming off of this knee surgery. You feel like that's a whole nother year to get completely right. And then you just sit for one more, kind of get the Jordan Love treatment. He'd only be 24 at that point. You give Sam Darnold a Baker Mayfield contract because you can't let him walk at this point. I wouldn't give him $50 million, but I'd give him 4 years, $140 million with an opt-out after that 3rd year. And yeah, guarantee $90 million of it. Like, that feels like a solid contract because you've seen what Sam Darnold can do. It's not like he was a 4th round pick that said, "Oh, we just believe in him." Like, this guy was the 3rd overall pick, and a lot of people thought he should have been the 1st overall pick. So the pedigree is there, and he's just finally putting it together. And the weird part that you don't think about is he's still younger than Joe Burrow. So he's got plenty left in the tank. He plays mainly from the pocket, so you're not worried about his physical traits falling off. And he hasn't played a ton of football to where you feel like, oh, there's kind of a lot of the tread on the tires where, you know, Josh Allen, yeah, he's only 28, but I mean, how much more does Josh Allen have in the tank playing how he does? That's not the issue with Sam Darnold. That Brian Flores-led defense, not a ton of big names, but Dallas Turner starting to come on. Andrew Van Ginkel has having an incredible year. And Cam Bynum, one of the better safeties in the league. Stephon Gilmore still locking people down. So there's, you know, plenty to like on the defensive side of the ball. They trade for Cam Robinson after Christian Darrisaw, one of the best left tackles in the league, goes down. And he stepped in and done a really good job. Aaron Jones, as we mentioned before in the video, now on the Vikings. He's not your 20 to 25 carry guy that he used to be with the Packers, but he'll still give you 15 to 18 touches a game. He'll get you about 5-6 yards total pop, including receptions out of the backfield. So just a lot to like. And then out of all of it, freaking Justin Jefferson, who is, I mean, he's looking like Randy Moss and Chris Carter combined. I mean, I don't know how the Vikings continually do this. Chris Carter, Randy Moss, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, and now Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I mean, do they always have the best 1-2 punches of the decade at wide receiver? That's another team. Steelers, Packers, the Vikings. Man, they draft and develop receivers incredibly well. A lot to like about the Vikings. And those LSU receivers, man. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Odell Beckham, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. I mean, holy shit. So, like what I'm seeing out of the Vikings. And then you got the Eagles. The Eagles. Freaking 12-3. They go down without Jalen Hurts. They probably win that game if Jalen Hurts plays the whole game. But you could argue they got the most talent in the entire league. And Saquon Barkley, if it wasn't for Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen just having stupid years, I think you easily give him the MVP. If Saquon Barkley is having this year that he is, if he had it last year with the weaker quarterback class for MVP candidates, I think he walks away with the MVP. He's been incredible. Easily one of the top 3 players in the league. And then Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, stout offensive line, the defense. You've put high draft capital with Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, who just, I mean, he's looking like prime Aaron Donald right now. And Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay. Looks like he's got a little pep in his step. And then all white boy in the back. Freaking Reed Blankenship making plays. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who does not hesitate to lay the wood. All these teams, man, this NFC is stacked. Right now, like I said, Packers and Lions, that feels like the NFC Championship. But you can't even count out a team. I felt like the Bucs were kind of that feisty team. But I kind of like the look of the Atlanta Falcons. If they can just get to the dance, they got a lot of talent on that team. I'm sure they wish that they just signed Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, who's now on the Raiders. I'm sure they wish they just signed him to pair with Grady Jarrett. And then, just give that money they gave to Kirk Cousins to him and just draft Michael Penix and start him for the whole season. Because even though his box score didn't, fucking knock your dick off, the command and poise he showed in that pocket made you think, okay, as much shit as the Falcons got, which they severely mishandled the situation, they made the right pick by getting the guy. Even though they're going to have this weird situation with Kirk Cousins and what they're going to do and all the money they owe him, they got their guy, what it seems like. It's only one game, yes, but you got a good offensive line. Bijan Robinson does not get talked about enough. I've never seen such a smooth runner in my life. He makes it look so easy. Got Drake London and Darnell Mooney at wide receiver. Kyle Pitts, which, I mean, he's still on the back of a milk carton. Can't figure out why he does not get enough play. I guess you could kind of start talking about bust territory. He had that good rookie year, but for some reason, he just cannot figure it out. But he's still there, and he's still incredibly talented. And then on defense, you're a little bit weaker, but like I was talking about Jesse Bates earlier, one of the best, if not the best safety in the league. A.J. Terrell, a shutdown corner. Matthew Judon with a couple big plays. Maybe he heats up a little bit. Grady Jarrett still stout in the middle. Shout out MSU. Troy Anderson had a pick six earlier in the year. He's not the biggest factor, but had to shout out the MSU Bobcats who are playing in the FCS National Championship January 6th against North Dakota State. So that's pretty sweet. Just went to the MSU game last week. Watched them beat the shit out of Idaho, which Idaho Vandals, that's a badass team name. That's a complete side note. And I completely lost what we were talking about. Oh yeah, teams in the NFC. I don't view the Falcons as doing anything. I think they're going to get bounced in the first round. They're probably going to go up against the Packers or the Vikings. That's just not a good matchup. It's rare that you'd have a team that, if the Falcons win out, they'd be 10-7. It's rare that you'd have a 10-7 division winner going up against a 13-4 or 14-3 wild card team. That's probably what's going to happen. But really, the Eagles, Lions, Vikings, Packers, man, those are the 4 teams that you fully expect to be playing in the NFC divisional round. And all 4 of those teams have shown they could win it all. And I feel the best. Like I said, I still think the Lions are the best team, but I feel the best about the Packers, just with their health, with how they're playing. Give me the Packers out of the NFC. In the AFC, I mean, it's the Chiefs. As annoying as that is, it's the freaking Chiefs. They just find ways to win. And even though Patrick Mahomes not having a great year, not having a great 2 years, you know what he is doing great? Converting in the red zone and on third down. He's the best quarterback on third down. And that's what you need. You just need to keep drives alive. And this team, when they get to the playoffs and it's 3rd and 5 and they need to make a stop or they need to get the first down to keep their game alive, they're not going to be stressed out. They're going to say, well, we've won 3 Super Bowls in the past 5 years. We've been to 4 of them. And we consistently win these close games like we've done almost every single game this year has come down to the final 2 minutes. And we find a way to win. And we're going to find a way to win this game. It just feels like the Chiefs. I'm not so worried about the Bills anymore after their ability to just not show up sometimes. And to try to put it all on the back of Josh Allen, I think they need to run the ball more. They were easily going to go up for 200 yards against the Patriots, but they just didn't run the ball. You go back and forth with the Bills. Like their ceiling, yeah. But then their floor, no. And it's hard to rule Josh Allen out. I just feel like the Chiefs would get the better of them in the playoffs. The one team that I would look out for. And, I mean, this team could beat anybody. Any given Sunday, they could beat the shit out of anybody. And they've shown that. The Baltimore Ravens. There was within one game of the division title. So they need the Steelers, which play the Chiefs on Christmas. If they beat the Texans, which the Texans don't look as daunting as we thought, the Ravens would be in first place. I believe. I know they'd be tied for record. I'm not sure how the tiebreaker goes. But Lamar Jackson is quietly having the best season of his career. 37 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, 3,800 yards, 68% completion percentage, 750 yards on the ground, another 3 touchdowns. His all-time incredible, one of the best individual seasons we've ever seen. One of the best MVPs of all time in 2019. His first year as the full-time starter for the whole season. 36 touchdowns, 6 picks, 1,200 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns, 66 completion percentage. We got 2 games left in this season, and he's already having a better season. And he's still got 2 more games left. He might throw for 40. I mean, he probably will throw for 40 plus touchdowns. You might be looking at 42, 43 touchdowns and almost 1,000 yards rushing with only 4 or 5 interceptions. That's retarded. I mean, that's like playing Madden on rookie difficulty in my player mode. That's insane. And we just have voter fatigue, so we're not going to vote him as the MVP. And Josh Allen is having a deserving year. Saquon Barkley as well. But Lamar Jackson, holy shit. I just played against my uncle who has him in his fantasy team. He went stupid dummy. That's a new phrase. Write it down. Lamar Jackson. Incredible season. And then you bring in the almost 31-year-old running back who will be 31 in 11 days. One of the best running backs we've ever seen. They said, this is about the time where running backs fall off, really, even before now. He's got a lot of tread on the tire. He's consistently over 300 touches a year. He can only take so much. Well, the Ravens bring him in, and what does he do? With 2 weeks left to go in the season, he's got 1,600 plus rushing yards, 13 touchdowns, and he's averaging almost 6 yards a carry. I mean, what the fuck? They traded for Deontay Johnson, who's a really good receiver, and even him, being as good as he is out of the slot, they said, nah, we're set here. They released him. They couldn't find a spot for him to play with Rashawn Bateman, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, who at the beginning of the season we said, hell yeah. And then he's kind of fallen off, but he's still there, and he's still incredibly freaking athletic. The offensive line has figured it out, but the most important part of this is the defense. In the beginning of the year, the pass defense, terrible. They've tightened it up. They start having Kyle Hamilton back in his free safety role, patrolling that deep part of the field. Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins, nice lockdown combo. Marlon Humphrey is just disgusting out of the slot. Patrick Queen, he's on the Steelers this year. But Roquan Smith, I mean, we talk about quiet years out of players. Just quietly the best linebacker in the NFL. And they brought most of their defense back outside of Patrick Queen. Most of their defense has come back. They're even sitting some of their veteran safeties for younger guys, which has helped their defense. So maybe you get those veterans kind of figuring it out. But most of that defense came back, and they're starting to figure it out. Zach Orr, Mike McDonald goes to Seattle to be the head coach. Zach Orr, former Ravens linebacker, they promote him. A little bit rough in the beginning. Just kind of like the Packers with Jeff Hafley. But they're starting to figure it out. And they're hitting their stride at the right time. And they're just quietly dominating teams. They dominated the Steelers. Which, side note on the Steelers. We could talk about them for a quick minute and then jump back to the Ravens. It always felt like this Steelers team was a house of cards. You're never going to question. They're going to play hard. It's going to be a close game. And they're going to be in it in the fourth quarter. But when your offense is basically Russell Wilson throwing rainbow balls to George Pickens, it's only going to take you so far. George Pickens has been out the past 2 weeks, and they've lost both those games. So, yeah, you need him back big time because he's most of your offense, but he's also just an incredible player that takes pressure. It makes safeties play out of the box, so now you can run better with Najee and Jalen Warren. And Russ is having a good year. Nobody's thinking that he's bad. It's just there's a lower ceiling to them. There's a higher floor as well. Mike Tomlin is just going to have these guys ready to go. But when you look at the Ravens, I mean, have we ever seen a team over the past 3 years that consistently can just dominate any team? The Lions last year, 12-5. They beat the Lions 38-3. The Niners on Christmas last year were just rolling over teams. I mean, completely dominating them in every single facet of the game. Just beating the shit out of every team. The Niners on their vintage Niners roll where they just destroy teams. Debo was hot. Kittle was hot. Fred Warner, they were incapacitating every team they played. The Ravens come in, and they made them look like a college team. And the Ravens had an incredible year last year, and then they just forget their identity. They get tight, and they lose 17-10 against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. The one thing that worries me about the Ravens is just can they stay true to their identity, which is running the football. Lamar has been incredible from the pocket over the past years. He has really developed that part of his game, and he takes pride in it, and it's awesome to see. But I don't want to see him lose touch on the fact that he is the best dual threat running back or quarterback that we've ever seen in the NFL. Hands down, there's no comparison. There's nobody close. Michael Vick, electric. You could argue he's the most important dual threat quarterback for what he did for the game. Cam Newton, amazing. Josh Allen, never seen anything like it. Lamar Jackson, though, a different level. And I just don't want to see him lose touch of that in the postseason. If it's a close game, just run the ball. You've got one of the best 3 running backs in the league with Henry, who has shown that he'll do it in the postseason. He goes off in December and January. This is his time to feast. We haven't seen Lamar put it all together in the postseason, and that's what we're waiting for. And I hope we get it this year, and maybe the slow year is kind of what they needed to figure it out. I mean, they're still 10-4 or 10-5. Yeah, they're still 10-5. So it's not like they're having a bad year, but last year they went 14-3, and they laid a clunker in the AFC Championship, and we're like, this team just can't do it. They forget who they are. Will they learn from those mistakes? And we've seen it a couple times this year where, when they played the Steelers a few weeks ago, like, why'd you only run the ball in a one-score game? Like 15 times. You threw it 40 times. Like, what are you doing? Run the damn ball. If I don't see the Ravens, if they played the Chiefs in the playoffs, which I think is the biggest threat to anybody in the NFL, but if I don't see the Ravens run it at least 30 times, you can dry erase the board and just count them out of every big time game in the playoffs because they won't do it. So if they can stay true to their identity and stay on this roll, they will be in the Super Bowl. And you'd be looking at a Packers and Ravens Super Bowl, which would be freaking incredible. Right now in the AFC, I still got to lean Chiefs. But with everything I just said, I mean, can you not root for a Ravens-Packers Super Bowl? That would be incredible. I'd love to see it. I might go put money on it. It's hard to bet against the Chiefs because they just feel like they're going to make it. But the Packers, after tonight, it's hard to say that they aren't one of the top 3 teams in the NFL. Who would you say? Chiefs, Lions, Packers? I don't feel like many people are going to argue that with how the Packers have looked. Sometimes it's like the college football rankings. Say we've got Alabama, which I'm an Alabama fan. Chill. I'm not roasting you guys, but say Alabama's ranked number 6 to begin the year. And then they lose 3 games. Like, well, they only fall to 15. Sometimes it was like Indiana at the beginning of the season where this team's 9-0. How are they only ranked 18? Sometimes if the team starts off ranked or starts off unranked, there's a little bit of bias as to are they really good? And it felt like that with the Packers. They start off a little bit slow. They're in a loaded division that we haven't given them the credit that is due. But over the past 5 weeks, they've easily been one of the best teams in the league. And I got to say, they're top 3. Yeah. Chiefs, Packers, Lions. I'd say Lions, Chiefs, Packers. Let's give you the top 5 right now, real quick. Number 1, Lions. Until they show us that the injuries are going to bite them in the ass, Lions number 1. Number 2, you got to say the Chiefs. They just find ways to win, and they've still got one of the best quarterbacks of all time and one of the best coaches of all time. Number 3, I'm putting the Packers. From what I've seen lately, give me the Packers, especially with the Eagles. Obviously, they were without Jalen Hurts. They dropped down a little bit. Want to see the defense show up in a game like that. We talk about this Eagles defense like it's, the greatest thing since sheepskin condoms. I want to see them show up in a game where their quarterback goes down. They're against a rookie quarterback, but they give up 36 points in a game-winning touchdown drive with 6 seconds left. So the Eagles drop down a little bit for me. So you got Packers at 3. Number 4, got to go to Bills. Obviously, they beat the Chiefs. They show up consistently in big games. That's the one thing that you can count on them. They might not show up in other games like the Patriots this weekend, who went up 14-0 on them in the first quarter. They found a way to battle back, get the win. They did not look that good. Josh Allen, he kind of looked like how he did when Bill Belichick used to coach against him. And the Patriots defense, I watch every snap of the Patriots. They're not good. And they're without some of their best players. Which, another side note, we're famous for these. Christian Gonzalez played every defensive snap, had 1 target, 0 catches allowed. They didn't even throw to him. He locked them down. Josh Allen did not look that good against a really subpar Patriots team. but still, you feel good that they're going to show up in a big game. They're a little bit banged up too. Their defense was without 4 key players. Offensively, they're still kind of getting healthy. They did get some of their weapons back, but they're still trying to kind of find their mojo. They got 2 weeks to do it, which they might even not even have a chance for the 1 seed come the final week of the year. So they just rest their guys, get a little healthier, go into the wild card like that. But they're number 4. And number 5, as much as I want to go to the Ravens, got to give some love to the Minnesota Vikings. They are just consistently doing it every week. Sam Darnold is playing his best football of the season, and he's had a great season, so that really says something. Justin Jefferson, I mean, he is just jockeying with Jamar Chase for best receiver in the NFL. I like the Vikings at 5. 6 would be the Ravens. We'll give you 6. We just talked about them. So, that's the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Want to hear what you got to say. Enjoy your week. Merry Christmas. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. Crazy. Or I'll be posting this on Christmas Eve. So tomorrow's Christmas. Merry Christmas. Hope you got some good gifts and hope you get some good gifts. And just enjoy the time with your family. Everybody stay safe and enjoy the holidays. Peace out.